He began setting about trying to assign me the things that he thought would most make me uncomfortable. That way he was going to get rid of me. And he assigned me to boxing.
I hear broadcasting, I think personalities. I think of people like you. I lived it with you.
I was a semi-preppy, spit and polished kid from University of North Carolina. What in the world was I going to know about boxing? I certainly wasn't urban. Lo and behold, I received an offer to call boxing matches on the most prestigious boxing television network. I now had an affiliation with Tyson on the air. I had been covering his fight, the purest sport, the most honest sport, the sport that tells us the most about who we are, what we can endure, what we can't endure, what we are like when confronted with danger and potential damage at the hands of another human being.
Joining us now on Open Book is Jim Lampley. He's a Hall of Fame sportscaster, and he's now an author. The title of the book is It Happened, A Uniquely Lucky Life in Sports Television. But I have to say this from a distance, or I'm a huge fan, I'm a fanboy of yours, because I love your broadcasting, I love your insights, and I learned so much in this book, not only about sports and things that I witnessed as a kid or witness even today, but I learned a lot about you. So you've been the voice behind some of the most unforgettable moments in sports, and you can hear that voice in the book. So before we get into it, tell us about Jim Lampley. Why did you go into this career of yours?
Why write a book? Or why go into sports television? Sports television was sort of my birthright from the beginning. My father died when I was 5 years old. My wife loves to say all of your stories begin with the same set of words. Those words are, my father died when I was 5 years old. I was 6 when my mother sat me down very explicitly and concertedly to watch a sports event on television. It just happened that the sports event she chose for initiating me was Sugar Ray Robinson versus Bobo Olson on Gillette Friday Night Fights for the middleweight championship of the world. And so she kind of guided me and schooled me into becoming a boxing fan. And she pointed out that day, by the way, watch Sugar Ray Robinson carefully. He's my favorite fighter because he dances while he fights. And he did. And that was expressive to me. But I spent the bulk of my childhood either in my great-grandmother's kitchen, or my grandmother's kitchen, I should say, my grandmother's kitchen in Hendersonville, North Carolina, or in my mother's kitchen in Pompano Beach, and then later Miami, Florida, where she had gone to sell life insurance after my father died. And both my grandmother and my mother were nonstop inveterate storytellers, and they endowed me with all of their storytelling. And that was the guiding sort of narrative theme of my childhood. And they competed for my attention by telling me stories. So I can still hear them in my head. I know that I made that point in the book, that they are talking to me all the time, even to this day. And both have been gone for quite some time, but they're not gone from me. They still speak to me every day.
I mean, it's such a beautiful part of the book, but you also talk about belonging. And you also talk about, because some of you, look, when I started my career, I was a blue-collar kid. I got to Wall Street. I was very green. I was somewhat insecure. It took a while for me to gain my confidence. You did everything: college football, Olympics, Wimbledon, the Ryder Cup, boxing. When did the light bulb go off to, like, I belong here? When did you think that?
Well, I began my network television sports career by winning a talent hunt. And my winning the talent hunt was completely counterintuitive and flew in the face of everything that ABC Sports had said they were looking for. The overall narrative is that in attempting to cover the captivity of 11 Israeli athletes at Munich in 1972, and attempting to satisfy the storytelling demands of two reporters, Howard Cosell and Peter Jennings, ABC had learned a great deal that they didn't know before about the capabilities of wireless cameras and microphones. And after Munich was over, they came back to New York, and there was a meeting among the sports division, the news division, and the engineering division. And the question was, now that we know that these signals will jump over concrete walls or that they'll go around metal barriers, what can we do with all that? And the thing that was first decided upon was we could put a reporter on the sideline of a football game. So that became the sideline of college football. That became a 432 candidate talent hunt for the first person to be named as a, quote, college age reporter. That began the process by which virtually every live sports event you now watch, especially in conventional sports like football and basketball and baseball, has an on the field or sideline reporter. All that began with me and a Stanford graduate named Don Tollefson in 1974. And I wound up staying on the sideline of college football for 3 years, bitching and moaning the whole time because I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be moving on in my career. I wanted to be doing Wide World of Sports segments and going to the Olympics and doing the other things that I thought would be my right at ABC Sports. And eventually that's what happened. Eventually I did do all of those things, and I got the opportunities that I craved. And one thing led to another. And ultimately I spent more than 40 years traveling the planet, going to sports events, covering them for various networks, 14 Olympics, ABC, NBC, CBS, Turner, boxing eventually on HBO, although the first person to assign me to boxing was a new incoming division president at ABC Sports, the successor to Roone Arledge, who wanted to get rid of me and thought that I would be such a stylistic misfit in boxing that he could easily get rid of me by making me embarrassed by putting me on the sport. And also that the audience would see me as Cosell's successor on boxing, and that would also ruin me. But the bottom line is I survived the experience, and ultimately he wrote me a ticket to HBO, the most prestigious television network in the world, and I wound up calling fights on HBO for 31 years. So some of my friends have pushed back against the inclusion of the word lucky in the title, but I say, when you're the one person eventually chosen from a 432 person talent hunt and you don't fit any of the credentials that they said they were looking for, you have to regard yourself as lucky. And I was.
There's a guy by the name of Roone Arledge, and I know you remember Roone Arledge. Okay. He loved you, Jim. He loved you. And you worked along some of these giants, Jim McKay, Howard Cosell. My first memory of Jim McKay was the 72 Munich Olympics, where we had the Israeli-Palestinian issue. Do you remember this?
Oh, well, of course. And, again, that what they learned from engineering during that period of time led to my genesis on the network. But yes, I watched the captivity coverage and everything up until McKay's most poignant moment in a career filled with unforgettable, poignant lines and moments, but they're all gone. They're all dead, was the single most dramatic thing that Jim ever said on the air. And he delivered it with such matter-of-fact simplicity that it became iconic. And I deeply, deeply admired him. I admired him both from watching him on television and then from watching him at close range when we worked with each other. I don't think he deeply admired me. I don't think he liked the idea of my genesis at ABC Sports, but I couldn't blame him for that. I was ultimately going to be poaching on his territory.
Well, that's what it's very Shakespearean. This. The younger man coming in, the older guy doesn't want to move. This is why we have the older guys in Shakespeare eating the lunch of the younger people. But
I know this because I was an English literature major in college, not a communications major, though I did ultimately go to graduate school in radio, television, and motion pictures. But yes, I have an English literature background, and the most influential professor I had in college was my Shakespeare professor, a guy named Peter McNamara.
Well, Well, I mean, we both know human nature, which is so evident in your book. Talk about Cosell. So, Howard Cosell, to me, reading about him, I feel bad about saying this. I haven't really breathed the words Howard Cosell until Jim Lampley brings him back into my life, and it happened because Cosell was my upbringing. Cosell was Monday Night Football. Cosell was Saturday Fights. Cosell was rocking and rolling with Muhammad Ali, who, if you ever come to my office, Jim, there's a huge painting of Muhammad Ali in my office that I made the champ sign because I used to go to his charity outing out in Arizona. I used to help raise money for Parkinson's research, and I loved the champ. But talking to us about Cosell, this is a Jewish lawyer from New York, awkward guy, incredible accent that is not your accent, by the way, or not a Jim McKay accent. Yet he becomes one of the more famous sportscasters. Tell us a little bit about him.
So Roone Arledge, before he moved to ABC and became president of ABC Sports, and eventually president of ABC Sports and ABC News, before all of that, Roone Arledge's executive position in television was that he was head of children's programming at NBC. And when he was head of children's programming at NBC, Roone would take a limousine into Manhattan from Westchester County on Saturday mornings to go and stand in the studio and supervise the feeds of children's shows. And when he was taking that ride in the limousine on Saturday mornings, he became acquainted with a Little League Baseball radio show that was being conducted on I think a Scarsdale radio station by an attorney named Howard Cosell. And Cosell literally had a Little League Baseball show. In fact, there was a later on executive at HBO, Steve Sheffer, big time exec at HBO, who was one of the ball players that Cosell covered. And Sheffer would do a great imitation. Little Stevie Sheffer playing for Yeshiva, et cetera, et cetera. But that was where Arledge heard the voice. And when he heard the voice and the unique delivery and the unique cadence of all that, somewhere he stashed in his mind, I can do something with that. Maybe I can do something. That's really interesting that this guy is making it that way. And so when he became president of ABC Sports, he reached out and made Cosell a figure in his sports division so that he could have that voice, that very distinctive delivery and cadence and accent and voice that Cosell had.
I hear the voice. I see my mother's shag rug, Lampley. I see the bell bottoms. I see the walnut paneling of my youth. Carol Brady has called Jim Lampley and asked for the walnut paneling back when I hear Cosell's voice.
I was eventually chosen at ABC to be the cub reporter on his magazine show. And it was a Saturday afternoon magazine show called Sports Beat. The fundamental content of Sports Beat was that every week Howard would do an in-studio interview with Bowie Kuhn, Al Davis, a couple of other guys who were his close compadres in sports. And somebody had to go out and do a feature piece. Somebody had to travel for the show to have legs, as it were. And I was the person who did that. So we had offices very close to each other on the 12th floor. And I would go to the office 2 or 3 days a week and sit and wait and listen for the moment when Cosell would step out of his office to where the secretary sat and say, hired, promoted, paid a 6-figure salary. It's insane. No talent whatsoever. This is a travesty. What is Roone thinking about? That was one version of Cosell's take on Jim Lampley. Then there was another version, which was, the kid down the hall is the only one here who's capable of completing a coherent sentence. None of those other morons, not Little Jimmy, our host only shorter, or Frank Gifford, the golden boy. None of those people can actually speak English, but Lampley can. So it depended on what day it was and what I was doing and what he was doing, which of those two versions would be delivered. But I heard them both on a pretty regular basis from down the hall.
It's the best. I mean, I could listen to this all day long because this is, literally, I'm going to set the scene for you. I'm reading sporting news. I'm waiting patiently for Sports Illustrated. I'm getting a bowl of cereal in the morning, Jim, and I'm opening up the back of the Daily News so I can look at Bill Gallo's cartoons. And I'm shoveling in the Apple Jacks, and I'm watching you guys and loving you guys and living vicariously through these great athletes. Let's go to HBO boxing, by the way, which is another thing that my brother and I pestered my father, who was a crane operator. We had to get HBO in the house.
And oh my gosh, HBO on a crane operator's salary. Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah, but I mean, we were addicted to HBO boxing. So tell us a little bit about HBO boxing and interacting with guys like Ali and Tyson and Foreman and Mayweather.
Well, I was assigned to boxing at ABC Sports by Arledge's successor in the sports division when Arledge became president of news, and eventually a new ownership, Capital Cities Broadcasting, decided it's crazy for somebody to be president of both sports and news. Rune, which one do you choose? Of course, he chose news. They took another guy from the stations division, Dennis Swanson, first person who had, by the way, given Oprah Winfrey a talk show at WLS in Chicago. That was his identity and cachet at the network. But they put him in charge of the sports division, and he arrived at the sports division with one basic predilection, which is, who is Jim Lampley and how do I get rid of him? So he began setting about trying to assign me the things that he thought would most make me uncomfortable. And that way he was going to get rid of me. And he assigned me to boxing right away. A, I would be seen as Cosell's successor. B, I was a kind of, semi-preppy, spit and polished kid from University of North Carolina. What in the world was I going to know about boxing? I certainly wasn't urban like Howard. And nobody understood or realized that my mother had assigned me to watch boxing and that the first event she had ever sat me down to watch was a boxing match. So I began to be schooled by a network executive named Alex Wallow, a Greenwich, Connecticut product who was, like you, in love with boxing. And he began to groom me to be a blow-by-blow announcer. And I think he did a pretty good job of grooming me to be a blow-by-blow announcer, because after a few months of that, and Dennis Swanson was at wit's end because he was not succeeding in getting me to leave the network. And in fact, I was getting some good reviews as the boxing blow-by-blow guy. Then I finally did walk away from my ABC contract. I went to work for CBS owned and operated stations, KCBS TV in Los Angeles. And I had a window within the contract under which I could do boxing for somebody. And lo and behold, HBO came along. So I received an offer to call boxing matches on the most prestigious boxing television network, HBO, as an unexpected consolation prize for basically getting canned at ABC. And my first several fights at ABC were Tyson's first several television network appearances. That was why HBO wanted me. I now had an affiliation with Tyson on the air. I had been covering his fights. They could see that the relationship was positive and good. And so I moved to HBO at that point to call boxing matches in 1988. And of course, early 1990 is when Mike was knocked out by Buster Douglas in Tokyo. And that was the first time when I was really stuck for an answer on the air. What am I going to say about this? The second time was when George Foreman knocked out Michael Moorer to become a 45-year-old heavyweight champion. And that is the moment when I said, it happened. It happened. And that was because Foreman had told me exactly how it was going to happen. And what he did in the ring mimicked everything he had said.
There's so many great, amazing stories in here. 14 Olympics had to be surreal. What's the Olympic memory that still gives you chills?
Well, two, and they're both in the book. The very first Olympic event that I ever attended live was Franz Klammer's downhill in Innsbruck, Austria, in 1976, which I think is probably still the greatest and most charismatic alpine ski race run.
I watched that on a 13-inch Sony Trinitron in my bedroom, and I was supposed to be in bed. I was 12 years old, and my brother and I shared a bedroom. We had a 13-inch Sony Trinitron that I bought with the money from my paper route, and I watched Franz Klammer do that and the call on that.
Well, let's tell your followers that they have to now buy my book to understand the graphic details of how that run looked the way it looked, and the decision that Klammer made going into the starting shack as to how he could conceivably win the race. And one of the things I learned that day, which, I still chuckle about to this day, is that you think you're going to watch a ski race on the mountain. You don't. You feel it. You hear it. You respond to all of the atmospherics, but you certainly don't see it, other than maybe a moment when somebody goes racing by. And that's, something I learned that day watching Klammer win that downhill. But that was one. And then the other, of course, is the Miracle on Ice. I was not supposed to be at the Miracle on Ice. I had other responsibilities. I was in a tape room editing a story about all of the political and organizational upheavals that had gone on in Lake Placid. And the phone rang, what was called the red phone. The red phone was the Arledge phone. I'd been at ABC 6 years at that point. I had never seen a red phone ring. And the red phone rang, and it was Arledge, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I told him, and he said, "Drop that, leave that with the editor, get over to the arena. I think something unusual is going to go on in this hockey game between the United States and the Soviet Union." Now, millions of Americans think that they watched the hockey game live. They did not. They saw it on tape because it was scheduled for 5 o'clock Eastern time. And it had been scheduled for 5 o'clock Eastern time all along when it was essentially a nameless game. Nobody knew which two teams would be appearing. It was a stepping stone toward the medal round. But eventually it came down to the United States versus the Soviet Union for what amounted to a semifinal, because the winner of this game was going to go into the final on Sunday morning. This was Friday evening. And when Arledge and the United States Olympic Committee went to the Hockey Federation to ask that the game be moved from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock so that the American audience could see it in prime time, the Russians exercised their right to say, no way. Game has been on the schedule for 5 o'clock ever since the beginning of the games. Game is going to be played at 5 o'clock. So I'm in a tape room editing a piece. My associate director and I are working, etc. We've got a little monitor on top of the tape bay where we're watching the hockey game as it takes place. And at the end of the first period, Mark Johnson, who was the hottest goal scorer in the world for 2 weeks, got loose in the Russian goal, or in the Russian end, I should say, and slipped the puck under Vladislav Tretiak's glove to make the score 2-2, tie the game. Unexpected tie at the end of the first period. And at that moment, Viktor Tikhonov, the Russian coach, pulled Tretiak, yanking from goal the greatest goalie in the history of the sport, arguably, who had carried them to every world championship and gold medal for the preceding 10 or 12 years. He yanked Tretiak and put in the backup goalie, Anatoly Mishkin. And the game went on. And the red phone rang, and I picked up the red phone because both the tape editor and the associate director pointed to me like, that's got to be for you. And it was Arledge. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I told him. He said, "Let that wait. Put that to rest. go to the hockey arena and get in because I have a hunch something strange is going to happen in this game tonight, and we need an interview to take us off the air. And the last thing I said to him was, Rune, I don't have the right credential to get into the hockey game. Now, this is only 8 years after Munich. We were still in a situation where if you didn't have the right credential to get into an Olympics event, you weren't going to get in. And the last thing Rune said to me was, you'll get in. Clunk, hung up the phone. And I went over to the hockey arena and I found the high school hockey coach whose job it was to supervise the arena. And I had met him a few days before because my agent was a hockey agent, and he let me in. And I wound up watching the last 2 periods of the game there, and then eventually doing an interview that night to take us off the air with Jim Craig and Mike Ruzioni outside of a restaurant in Lake Placid after the biggest upset in the history of team sports. Never been a bigger upset.
I love rereading it in the book. And Mike Ruzioni, to us Italian Americans out here on Long Island, he was the man. We were wearing his jersey, and I remember having such anxiety watching that, and of course Al Michaels' famous cadence, "Do you believe in miracles?" So I could do a 2-hour podcast with you because it's just amazing. But we have a little time constraint. So I'm down to the 5 words. And so in my podcast, Jim, me and my producers, we pick out 5 words. We want our author to say a sentence about the word just to get their reaction. So if I say the word broadcasting, you say
broad audience. Signals being sent out over electronic waves, and it first began with the transformation of Morse code signals into radio news in the 19-teens, before 1919.
Yeah, it's great. I hear broadcasting, I think personalities, and I think of people like you. I think
about an electronic process.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's why you're such a great broadcaster.
That was what I taught in evolution of storytelling and American electronic news media here at the University of North Carolina. I taught for 5 semesters after I came here to Chapel Hill, and whenever you say broadcasting, my mind goes back to day one and what I was teaching to those students. Yeah.
I say the word sport. You say what?
From the beginning of mankind, going back to the days of ancient Egypt and eventually Greece and Rome, there have been organized contests of physical prowess, physical skill, and ultimately they came to be known as sports. I don't know how they became known as sports, but I know that they weren't called that at the beginning, because whatever they were called, it was in Roman or Greek or Phoenician or some other language that preceded the preeminence of English. But in English, it's sports.
How about the word boxing?
The purest sport, the most honest sport, as my great friend Tom Hauser has titled a recent book. The sport that tells us the most about who we are, what we can endure, what we can't endure, what we are like when confronted with danger and potential damage at the hands of another human being. All of that we learn from boxing, and it's my favorite sport.
Legacy.
So I don't think of that in terms of me, other than to say, my father died when I was 5 years old. My mother raised me. My grandmother taught me how to tell stories. I am their legacy. And I attempt through the things that I do to honor all 3 of them for everything they gave to me and taught to me when I was growing up.
Last word. I'm going to give you the last word, sir. Jim Lampley.
One of the luckiest people who has ever lived on this particular planet. A person who, because of the choices of others, not his own choice, was given all the opportunities he would most have dreamed of, up to and including calling boxing matches, up to and including going to 14 Olympics, up to and including that my then 8-year-old daughter was babysat for an entire day at the United States Boxing Writers Association dinner in New York by Muhammad Ali. That Muhammad Ali was my absolutely incomparable lifetime hero. He had been my hero when his name was Cassius Clay. That the very first live prize fight I ever attended was Cassius Clay versus Sonny Liston, February 25, 1964 in Miami Beach. My life reads like a fictional story. Then, I wouldn't blame anybody for buying my book and reading the book and thinking to themselves at some point, oh my gosh, did he make this up? Or is this really true? It's really true.
You know, when Stefan said to me that you wanted to come on my show, I was very flattered. So I consider myself lucky as well. But I lived it with you. So I was so excited to have you come on the show because I know that you have and I know you feel blessed, and you should, and God bless you. And you've been a great contributor to our zeitgeist and our culture. But I lived it with you. You made it part of our life stories. And you need to know that, and you need to know that you have very grateful fans out there, Jim.
A few years ago,
and I'm one of them.
A few years ago, I would never have thought that I would say, Anthony Scaramucci, I love you. Okay. But I love you for saying that, and I love you for
I love you back.
Your response to my book.
Yeah, I love you back. I really appreciate you joining us. Hall of Fame sportscaster, now author, Jim Lampley. Title of the book, It Happened. A uniquely lucky life in sports television. And let me tell you, we are going to promote this. We have 200,000 followers on our YouTube channel, and I've got over 1 million in other sites. We're going to push this book very hard for you, sir, and I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much, Anthony. I appreciate it. And, I have really enjoyed this and we'll look forward to coming back.
If you get knocked down, you stand up and you try again. You might try differently. When you're facing terrain like that, you just do it. You look at the mountain in front of you and you begin to climb. You don't judge it. If you judge it, then you're playing the referee in the games down the field, right? You can cry foul, but you won't be in the game. And you have to find the way to your ambition, and you have to allow yourself to do more than one thing. Who says that we should make a decision when we're 20 and that's what we should be doing when we're 50, right? This book is about friendship and survival and betrayal. It's about standing up when they pass you by and saying, I won't quit, when they want you to quit. But it's also about how some of those women become very much like the monsters they worked for. Fiction is the lie through which we tell the truth.
Welcome to Open Book. I am your host, Anthony Scaramucci. Very happy to be joined by Elaine Goldsmith-Thomas. The title of the book is Climbing in Heels. And this is a novel. And Elaine, of course, is a Hollywood agent. She's turned producer and now author. But man, is this a great book. You know what? This is my era. This is the problem with this book. This is my era. Elaine, it's good to have you on. Before we get into the book, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you make your way to Hollywood and writing and all this fun stuff that you're doing?
Oh, gosh, I think I've always been a writer. And, there's no straight line in careers. I think the secret to any career, Anthony, you would probably back this up, is the ability to pivot, to go one way and then go, oh, fuck, that's not working. Oops, sorry, I don't know. Am I allowed to say that? And turn around and find another way.
You're on Anthony Scaramucci's podcast. You're allowed to curse.
There you go. Thank you.
That's what we do.
Well, in that case, yes. Right. I was born in LA. I was born in the San Fernando Valley. I was born in Pacoima. My mother called it Arleta. Then we moved to Sepulveda, and my mother called it Northridge. I never really knew where I lived. I just knew it wasn't good enough for my mother. But I also knew that image was more important than truth. And I watched how she sort of nudged our reality to become her truth, or her truth to become our reality, right? So I think my ambition was, she was both my fuel and my kryptonite. And I think that, all she wanted was to live closer to Ventura Boulevard. That was the great divide between, it was like the hills and the hills not. If you lived in the hills, man, you were something. If you didn't, you lived where the housekeepers lived. We lived where the housekeepers lived. So, my path to Hollywood was I didn't even want to get to Hollywood. I just wanted to live in the hills. Probably something like that. Anyway, I went to school. I helped, much like one of the characters in my book, I helped a boy I was deeply enamored with. I helped him get an agent. I realized there was no science to it, that people put their fingers in their mouths to see which way the wind was blowing. And I understood that passion speaks. And I was passionate. I was passionate to get the yes. So I worked a whole summer before going to college to get him an agent, and I finally did. And he ended up getting little roles for a while. I thought he was going to be, chiseled into the Mount Rushmore of Hollywood. And then he dumped me. But I never forgot how good it felt to get the yes. And when I graduated college, I remembered how good it felt. My dad was a salesman who taught me that you have to really believe in what you're selling. And then you have to connect. You have to figure out a way in. And I guess the ambition of my mother and the drive and tenacity of my father formed and informed me. So there you go.
Hey, listen, you know what? I love the honesty in the story. We're all driven by different things, our emotions, our connections to our families, and what we idealize our lives to be, right? So I love the honesty in your story. Let's talk about this fictional story. The story is set in the 1980s agency world. Okay, so there was no misogyny in that world. There was no male chauvinism in that world, of course, right, Elaine?
As I like to say, there's a lot of blow and blow jobs, and you can't judge these women. I don't even know if you can judge the men through the prism of 2025. It was the world. People say to me, "How did you do it?" And when you're facing terrain like that, you just do it. You look at the mountain in front of you and you begin to climb. You don't judge it. If you judge it, then you're playing the referee in the games down the field, right? You can cry foul, but you won't be in the game. And the characters in my book wanted to be in the game, and I wanted to be in the game. So, and the terrain that I was faced with was, incredibly misogynistic. Some of the guys, not all of them, they called it was, you wanted to be a sexy Terry if you could. But if your wiggle was more waddle, or you were too loud or too smart or too ambitious, you had to figure another way to get that job. As one of the characters in my book had to figure out a way in, because there was the three women that really are at the center of this book, there's no straight line for them. So they had to leverage every opportunity, metaphorically, in heels.
Okay, so there's Beanie, Mercedes, and Ella. Those are the three women. Who is Elaine the most like? Are you the most like Ella?
Oh, thank you. No, I am probably Beanie. I am probably most like Beanie. I mean, I guess they're all a little bit like me and not, but Beanie is closest to me because Beanie was also born in the Valley. Beanie was driven, all three of these women were sort of shaped by their mothers. Beanie wanted to please her mother. Ella was repelled by her mother, who was an ex-debutante, who believed that separate was equal. And Mercedes sort of became her mother. In other words, she leveraged every opportunity trying to find a rich man to protect her. And each one of them, the shadow and echo of their mother informed their trajectory. I probably was like Beanie, though her path wasn't mine. Beanie did work for a misogynist. Beanie was introduced to cocaine, and a lot of porn, and and she worked for a guy who very much did not want her to succeed. She knew too much. She was too smart. So while that wasn't me, it was a lot of people that I knew. And so I sort of, the ability, fiction, gosh, I posted something on my Instagram the other day. I can't remember the quote now. It was something that through fiction, you're able to tell the truth. I'm going to find that quote because it was such an amazing quote. Fiction allows you to turn left, right? The quote is Camus, and it's fiction is the lie through which we tell the truth. And I think it allowed me the ability to tell people what it was like in the 80s, especially for women who weren't the Angie Dickinson in the Rat Pack. They weren't one of the guys that they could hang out with that didn't threaten them. And it also allowed me to turn left and invent things. And there are a lot of facts in the book and a lot of fiction.
All right, it's summer, and let's be honest, there's nothing worse than tossing and turning in a hot room, sweating through the sheets like you're on a bad cable news hit. I've had those nights, and they can be miserable, which is why Cozy Earth's bamboo viscose sheets are a game changer. These sheets are temperature regulating, incredibly breathable, and they help you sleep several degrees cooler. I'm telling you, the first night I slept like a baby. No heat, no humidity, just cool comfort. Cozy Earth even gives you a 100-night sleep trial. So try it during the hottest stretch of the year. If you're not in love, send it back. But trust me, you won't. Upgrade your summer. Go to CozyEarth.com and use code OPENBOOK for 40% off best-selling temperature-regulating sheets, apparel, and more. Trust me, you'll feel the difference the very first night. Sleep cooler, lounge lighter, stay cozy. I find that fiction is probably the best pathway into understanding humans because of what you just said. You've got the license now because it's fiction to tell the truth in the story. And so when you're
well said, Anthony. Well said.
Mm-hmm. But I think it is. And that's the reason why I love fiction. I learned so much from fiction. Think of William Shakespeare, how much he teaches us about human behavior. But I want to talk about climbing in heels for a second because I think your life is that, right? You climbed in heels and you took the obstacles in front of you without victimhood. Even if you were being victimized, you shed the idea of victimology and you just kept going. And I think the message is something that should resonate today. How should that message resonate today in 2025?
Well, it seems to be resonating. They're calling it the beach read of the summer. People are young. What's interesting is young women are reading and going, wow, the 80s seem great. And I go, right. Yeah, I guess so. And people who are older are reading it and wryly smiling. I mean, yeah. Again, it's that metaphor. You can play the referee. You can say foul, but you're missing the game. So you kind of have to look at whatever obstacle is in front of you. This is how I would translate it for now.
Well,
and I would say yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I want you to react to this. Okay, so I live in Manhasset. This is a suburban town, and every woman in this town watches Yellowstone or did watch Yellowstone. And because there's macho alpha men kicking the shit out of each other in Yellowstone, and there seems to be a shortage of that sort of electricity in our society now. We seem like we have muted those people. So I feel like people that are reading your book and watching Yellowstone, there's something there to that. What is that? Am I missing something? Is there something there sociologically?
Well, it's so interesting that you called Yellowstone that. When I think of Yellowstone, I think of that character who's Costner's daughter, who's kick-ass. I mean, you can't kill her. She's the Terminator. You know, they run her over, they burn her up, they blow her up. She just doesn't die, and she keeps going, and she keeps smarting and outsmarting them. So when you say Yellowstone, I think, yeah, there are sexy men in there, but there's this kick-ass woman in there. I guess, yeah.
Well,
I mean, I think
I think there's both. I think there's something for everybody in there. That's your book, isn't it?
That is my book. My book is about navigating the waves on a beach, and understanding that if you get knocked down, you stand up and you try again. You might try differently. You might, wear a life preserver. You might try differently, but life is really about the climb. It's, for those who haven't read it, I don't want to ruin the ending, but it really is the ascent rather than the destination, all of those cliches. And these women in the book are strategic, and they have to be. I think we all have to be a little strategic when we're faced with the unexpected daily kind of eruptions of life, right, Anthony? I mean, I look at you and your career, and you have an interesting, amazing career that you couldn't have planned, right? My mentor, a woman named Sue Mengers, said to me years ago. I mean, she's sort of the model for Sheila Day in my book, one of the most powerful agents in the world. And she would say, honey, my career wasn't planned, it just happened. And I think much of life is about embracing what's happening and the reactions we have to it. Because none of us could have predicted the trajectory. But if you have the desire, like the women in my book do, to leave their footprint in heels, then go for it. Because here's the truth. The only thing stopping you is you. If you want to write a book, if you want to write a screenplay, if you want to become an actor, do it. The only thing stopping you is you. And it took me a long time to understand that. I was a top agent in the 90s. I was a big time agent. I represented a lot of movie stars, a lot of women, Julia Roberts and Jennifer Lopez and Madonna and Susan Sarandon, a lot of, and men, Spike Lee, Tim Robbins. And I and Nicolas Cage, I was good at it, but it wasn't all I was good at. I was a writer, and I was afraid to tell people, especially my clients, that that's what I wanted to do as well, even though being a storyteller made me a better agent. And you have to find the way to your ambition, and you have to allow yourself to do more than one thing. Who says that we should make a decision when we're 20 and that's what we should be doing when we're 50, right? I think you're finding your way to your multifaceted career, Anthony, and I think it makes you more interesting. It makes your path more interesting.
I wanted to be in Hollywood, Elaine.
You did? So come to Hollywood. Come to Hollywood. You're not dead.
I didn't have the balls. Yeah, but but I just want you to know that when I was a kid, that's what I wanted. But I was anxious about money, so I went to Wall Street. You know why I went to Wall Street, Elaine? Because that's where the money was. It was like Willie Sutton with the banks, right? I knew if I just had a middling career on Wall Street, I would be rich enough to take care of my parents. That's literally the simplicity of the thought process of my career.
But play the record out, Anthony. Okay? You're not dead. You're a thriving, huge, well-spoken personality who's done so many things.
You'll be my agent.
What? Oh, you wanted to act? Is that what you wanted to do?
Yeah, of course. I wanted to be a James Bond villain or something.
See, you could have taken the path. You could have taken the path to Hollywood after you made money and took care of your parents. You could have moved them out west. Like in your parallel universe, you move them out west. You've got money so you can bankroll a movie. Then you could have done your own movie and starred in it.
Well, that's why I got my son. I bankrolled my son in his movie. That was the key for him. You know, he said he got his first short film in Tribeca. You write at the
Good for
beginning of this
him.
book. You're pulling a quote, and when I read your book, I was like, oh my God, this woman. I mean, I don't know you, but you make us like fall in love with you because I'm going to read this
Oh,
quote. I want you to react to this quote. Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Beware that when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster, Elaine. For when you gaze long into the abyss gazes also into you. Now, that's Friedrich
Yeah.
Nietzsche. And of course, I read that in the mid
Yeah.
80s. And Oliver
Yeah.
Stone put that on Wall Street One, by the way. I don't know if you remember that. That was in the screenplay.
No.
That was Michael
No.
Douglas said that he won the Academy Award. He said you got to be careful when you're staring into that abyss. You could become that. Okay, and I've lived my life. If you took that and you took Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and you put both of those in the fly machine that we put Jeff Goldblum in the 1980s, you fuse those two ideas. I didn't want to be Jacob Marley. I wanted to be the reformed Ebenezer Scrooge, charitable, and I didn't want to stare into the abyss of the greed on Wall Street and become that. And you did that in Hollywood. Okay, so how did you do it, Elaine?
Yeah. Well,
By the way, that's
listen.
a huge compliment, by the way, and I mean that because
Thank you.
I mean that. You've done that,
Thank you. Thank you.
and you
Thank
deserve
you.
credit
Thank
for
you.
that.
Thank you. What I like to say is, look, this book is about friendship and survival and betrayal. It's about standing up when they pass you by and saying, I won't quit when they want you to quit. But it's also about how some of those women become very much like the monsters they worked for. And I think it's about forgiving them a bit. Um, you hope you're not monstrous. You hope you can be better than the generation that came before. And if you are, you have to correct. I think that life changed with Me Too. I think that they shined a giant light on the outrageousness um, that was allowed in the Hollywood that you wanted to go to. It was outrageous, Anthony. It was Harvey Weinstein wasn't the exception. He was the rule. How did he exist? There were
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of him. He just kept going and and continued. And somebody was smart enough, and I certainly applaud Ronan Farrow for shining a light on it. So now I think there is a big
Mm-hmm.
the entire world is watching itself. Um, I'm not talking even about
Mm-hmm.
the outward monstrous behavior. I'm talking about the monsters inside, the entitled narcissists who are desperate to hang on to their power and their youth.
Okay, so when I close the book and I look up and say, okay, what did I learn from the book? I learned that you can keep your integrity and you can climb in your heels and step over and around things and dodge and weave and have a successful career. It's not a perfect career. No one's career is, but you can survive if you keep your compass together. Is that what I got out of the book?
I like that you got that out of
Is
the
it,
book, and I like that you forgave the women because I don't know that they always make the right moral choices or by other people's standards, but they did by their own
but the
compass.
men make all the moral choices, Elaine.
Well, look, some of the men were quite decent in the book, and
Yeah, exactly. But I just say that you think the men don't exactly.
yeah, I think that here's what I would say. Yes, do the very best you can with the terrain that's in front of you, and and enjoy the climb. I think as you close the book, Anthony, what you recognized is, especially with Beanie, she had summited, right? And sometimes sometimes as
Mhm.
you look back, when people say they miss the hungry years, it's the climb, it's the people you meet along the way. Take note of them. But more than anything, I guess if I want people to take anything away from the book, I think I think they're going to enjoy the read. It seems to be the beach read of the summer. People are loving it. Um, and taking a page from my book, it's never too late, Anthony. You want to go to Hollywood,
All
go to
right.
Hollywood.
I look at. I've got a lot of skin
It's a
products going here.
beautiful face. It's and
Trying to stay moisturized, Elaine.
you took
Trying to
care
stay
of
moisturized.
your parents, you financed your son. Now it's your turn. See, and that's what I think.
All right, I hear you.
I think these women found the way to the careers they wanted, and they weren't always planned, right? And that's what climbing in heels is about. I mean, they're saying it's little Valley of the Dolls. It's a little steamy. Did you find it steamy, Anthony?
Loved it. I loved it. Let me tell you something, okay? Everything about it is inside the dark channel in our minds, right? I mean, come on. We are all a little like this, whether we want to admit it to ourselves or not.
Thank you.
Even the most Puritan are a little like this. All right, so listen, I'm going to change this up on my producers. What I usually do is I end the interview with 5 words. And then what I ask the author to do is I'm going to say the word and you respond to it in a sentence or two. Okay, but I'm going with 10 this time because I think this is so interesting. And some of them are people. And so you don't have to get too detailed. I'm going to say the person's name. You give me a sentence. Okay, you ready?
Yes, sir.
What are you going to say? I say Jennifer Lopez. You say what?
Jennifer Lopez, I would say, limitless. I mean, if anybody inspired me, Anthony, it was Jennifer. She encouraged me to not be afraid. I've been writing under pseudonyms and I've been writing uncredited for years, Anthony. And I was too afraid to stand in my truth as a writer. I thought people would judge me or they wouldn't want to work with me as a producer. I was afraid. So she was the one who said, stand in your truth. This was a dancer who became a dancer who became an actor, who became a singer, who became an international brand. And she empowered me to do it as well. There's a lot of actors who want to sort of hold their fame to their own chest. And she said, you've got to live your dream. That's who she is. So I'm her producing partner.
I don't know if you caught what I don't know if you caught what I said. I don't know her. I've never met her. She seems incredibly likable, and somebody like me, growing up the way I grew up, identifies with her. I have a soft spot for her.
Yeah, no, I did hear that.
That's just me looking at her from a distance.
It's funny. I don't know how many actors, she's my producing partner, would have said, look, you go off on your book tour. You do you. Who would have held me on her shoulders the way she did. I think that's quite extraordinary. I do. Knowing actors like I do.
So let's go to these last.
Okay.
Let's go to these last couple. I'm going to have you repeat a few if you don't mind. Okay. I want to start again with Beanie Rosen.
I'd say Beanie has survived her mother, her father, a misogynistic industry, and found her way to her ambition. She is a survivor.
Mercedes Baxter.
Mercedes learned from her mother, who she thought was her sister, how to leverage opportunities to find a safe harbor, and ended up doing that.
Ella Gaddy.
Ella Gaddy was so busy fighting tradition, wanting to find her own way and her own voice, and really believed rules were for sheep, and she never wanted to join a flock, so she started her own.
Okay, this is the last one. I'm going to give you the final word. Elaine Goldsmith Thomas.
A work in progress.
the best days are to come, Elaine? The
best days are to come. The best
days are ahead?
Yes. Here's what I want to leave you with, Anthony, if you can hear me. We don't only live once. We live every day. We die once. So every single day is a second chance to go to Hollywood, Anthony, to make your dreams come true. The best days are right now.
Yeah.
Now, when you fly to London tonight, just remember that.
I'm going to come talk to you about. You're going to be my career coach. You're going to be my career coach.
You got it. You got it.
The title of the book is "Climbing in Heels," a novel. It is a phenomenal beach read. There's so much going on in the book, but it's also allegories about human behavior and understanding the different channels in our minds. And I really tell you, I love the book, and I wish you great success with it. And I'm sure you're going to get a TV deal out of this book and other things. It's just that good.
Oh, Anthony, thank you. Let me just add this. We have a TV deal. I'm writing it with Darren. I'm writing it with Darren Starr. We sold it. We have 10 episodes on the air on Peacock already. So there you go. Maybe that's your acting role.
Oh, I gotta check it out. But you say it's 10 episodes. You haven't debuted it yet. You're in the process of
we're writing it.
Writing it. Okay, good. Yeah. Well, there you go. I can play. Trust me. I can play a misogynist chauvinist from the 80s.
There you go. Me. Okay.
I lived there. I've been there. Okay. Just something to keep in mind.
I see it now.
You know, John Hamm is John Hamm, that big, tall, handsome son of a bitch, is unavailable. Okay. You need some Tom Cruise size actors. I'm your guy.
Okay. Got it.
Thank you. Lots of love.